Hey folks, over the last 12 weeks, we've been testing these 6 game loads here in front of me out of 2 different shotguns with 2 different chokes from 2 different distances. Now let's do an overview of what we have found and see if we can determine which is the best overall small game load. Let's remind ourselves what shotguns we've been using. We had the Remington SPR 210. It's a side-by-side. It's a 20 gauge with 3-inch chambers. It has 26-inch barrels, and we used a 5.85 and a 6.05 choke. Here we have the Stevens 512. It is a over and under 20 gauge. It has a 3-inch chamber with 26-inch barrels, and we used a 5.85 and a 6.10 choke in this one. So let's discuss our results from 20 yards with the improved cylinder chokes. That would simulate a typical rabbit hunting shot around here. So here we have the Remington Express extra long range game loads. These game loads were the best overall from 20 yards from the Remington side-by-side. Here we have the Kent Ultimate Fast game loads. These were the best using the improved cylinders from 20 yards out of the Stevens 512. Now, when I say the best, I mean produced the tightest pattern. The Remington SPR 210 with the Remington extra long range, we got almost 70% of the load in a 12-inch circle at 20 yards. That very well may be too many pellets. We don't want to destroy a rabbit. We just want to get him to where we can get him in a pot. So with the Stevens 512, once again, the Kent Ultimate Fast loads, we almost got 60% of the load in a 12-inch circle at 20 yards using the improved cylinder choke. We may have gotten too many pellets for that shot. We don't want to destroy a rabbit. So now let's take a look at these 3 middle ones. We have the Federal high brass game loads. We have the Winchester Super X's. And we have the Fiocchi Field Dynamic High Velocities. All 3 of these got between 40 and 50% of the pattern in a 12-inch circle from 20 yards. With the Winchester Super X's being the most consistent between the 2 guns with the 2 chokes at 20 yards. Now, the worst of the group, the Fiocchi Golden Pheasant. Not only were these the worst of the group, they were the most expensive of the group. The Fiocchi Golden Pheasants did well out of the 512 with over 40% of the load in the 12-inch circle, but with the Remington SPR 210, they didn't do that well. So if we were looking to buy 1 load of these 6 for rabbit hunting out of both of these shotguns, this would be my choice. The Winchester Super X's. They were the most consistent between the 2 shotguns from 20 yards. Alright folks, so now let's discuss the results that we got simulating squirrel hunting using 5.85 chokes from 30 yards. Alright, so this was nowhere near as close as the 20-yard shots with the improved cylinders simulating rabbit hunting. We had 1 overall best performer out of both shotguns, and it was the Kent Ultimate Fast loads. Now, the Kents had over 30% of the load in the 12-inch circle in the Remington SPR from 30 yards, but it did considerably better with the Stevens 512. It had 45% of the load in a 12-inch circle from 30 yards using a 5.85 choke. Now, The second best, and with over 30% of the load in the 12-inch circle from 30 yards using the two 5.85 chokes out of both shotguns, the most consistent was the Winchester Super X's. Now, these next ones for the worst of the group. The worst was the Remington Express extra long ranges. I wouldn't buy these for squirrel hunting. Next came the Federal high brass game loads. I wouldn't buy these for squirrel hunting. Next, the third best out of the Stevens 512 was the Fiocchi Golden Pheasants, but they performed poorly out of the Remington SPR 210 from 30 yards, and they performed poorly out of both the two shotguns from 20 yards. They were having problems with their wadding, the shot cups. The third best out of the Remington SPR 210 was the Fiocchi Field Dynamics. These two, the two Fiocchis, I might would buy for squirrel hunting for their two respective best performing shotguns. So that leaves us with the best overall performing out of both shotguns with both chokes from both distances was the Kent Ultimate Game Loads and the Winchester Super X's. Both of these I would buy. Now remember, from 20 yards with the improved cylinders, the Kents kind of destroy their bunny rabbit. So maybe when using the Kents, we would drop down to a cylinder choke for rabbit hunting. The most consistent overall, and the one that I would buy because they're a little cheaper than the Kents, are the Winchester Super X's. They perform the best from both distances with both shotguns with both chokes. So these are the ones that I would pick up to use. This doesn't mean that these are going to perform the same out of your shotguns. You should still pattern them. But I understand that some of y'all live in the city, some of y'all don't have time to pattern them. And we have tested these out of two shotguns with two chokes from two distances over 12 weeks, multiple shots. And these Winchester Super X's are by far the most consistent out of these two shotguns. I suspect they will perform well out of most shotguns, especially shotguns with interchangeable chokes. I like to use a particular choke for a particular type of hunting and then make my shot work out of that choke. So this is the way I decide which ones I want to use. So in closing, if it was me, I would pick up the Winchester Super X's. If I couldn't get them, the Kent Ultimate Fast Loads, being a little more expensive, would be my number 2 choice. These other ones, I would buy maybe the Fiocchis for squirrel hunting, and the Remingtons maybe for rabbit hunting, but the Federal High Brass Game Loads, I'll shoot these up, and when I'm done with these, I probably won't get no more for a few years, and maybe I'll try them again later on down the road. So until next time, y'all stay safe while you're hunting your small game, and God bless.